Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today on our Wednesday wisdom session. As always, I'll invite you to take a moment to settle into this moment, wherever you are, into your body, into your environment, into your heart, and open up our hearts for the talk today. Because opening our hearts is actually how we connect with ourselves and each other, which is very on theme for today's session because it's called We're All in This Together. What a wholesome topic. And it's not just going to be, us supporting each other, but more specifically, how can we spiritually support each other? How can our spiritual practice strengthen our ability to support others around us? Right? What an interesting topic. So a little bit about our speaker today, Nicola. Nicola has such a fascinating background. She works as a mental health chaplain at the Cumberland Hospital and as a clinical pastoral supervisor for the Mental Health Clinical Pastoral Education Centre in New South Wales. She is passionate about supporting people who feel called into spiritual care practice and offers the education and training required to become a chaplain across multiple contexts, including prisons, hospitals, aged care, defense, emergency services, temples, communities, schools, universities, and workplaces. A Buddhist practitioner for 25 years, Nicola operates on an intentional multi-faith basis, both in her practice as a chaplain and also in her supervisory practice. Today, we actually have a very special session. Nicola's bringing with her a session that she usually runs with her clients, like supervisors and so on in different contexts. So I'm really looking forward to it. So it will be interactive, even more interactive than usual. You're very welcome to ask any questions in person, just your hand up or let Nicola know. And for those of you online, you're very welcome to either put your virtual hand up in Zoom, or you can put your message or question in the chat and I can read them out to you. If you want to message your question privately to me, you're welcome to do that as well. Just make sure you message it to me so I can read it without revealing who you are. And I want to quote Nicola on asking question, like if a question has arisen for you in a certain moment, there must have been a reason that arose for you. So we really encourage you, and Nicola really encourages you as well to ask those questions when you do have them arising. So that is all for the introduction. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Nicola to take us over.
Wow, thank you. I've got some notes, so if I'm looking down, it's because I need to refer to my notes. But look, firstly, thank you for such a warm welcome. It's really lovely to be part of this, this community spiritual care that the Metta Centre offers and feeling the warmth of all your heart. So thank you for the warm welcoming invitation. What I'd like to do is to start off with a bit of time in meditation practice. And before we do that, given that we're going to be talking a bit about spirituality and spiritual care, I'm going to open with an acknowledgement of country. So we're going to, before we even start talking about spirituality and spiritual care, let's experience some spirituality. Let's experience what spirituality is and what it does for us. So I'm going to open with an acknowledgement of country and some Aboriginal music. And I invite you to, what do the words do to you? How do the words impact you? What does the music, when it washes over you, what effect does it have on your body, on your emotions? How are you connecting with this? And you don't have to reveal this. This is just for you privately. Whatever the response is valuable to experience. You might go, oh, this is wonderful and uplifting. You might go, oh, it's too noisy and loud and I've got a headache. Or you might say, oh, I'm just bored and I haven't had my dinner yet. No, but I've come. Whatever your response is your response. And I encourage you to notice it and engage with it. So acknowledgement of country. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands that we are meeting on today, the Burra Madigal peoples. If you're online, I encourage you to share in the chat the lands on which you sit, or the name of the peoples or nations that are indigenous where you are at present. We acknowledge their ancestors that defended, walked, and managed the lands, and who left a legacy of strong cultural wisdom and knowledge embedded in these lands. We recognise those Aboriginal people who were forcibly removed from their families and communities, and acknowledge the negative impact of such profound disconnection. We pay our respects to the present elders who hold the knowledge as teachers and pioneers, and to the youth as they grow and emerge into the ways of eldership. That was Lewis Burns, and that was recorded in 2018 at the Tribal Rhythms Gathering in the US. So that's one form of spirituality. Let's now engage in a form of spirituality that we might be a little more familiar with and do a little bit of meditation practice. Now, for the people online, you're going to have to ad lib. But for the people in the room, I invite you to come and take 4 pebbles from the dish of river stones here. Please come and help yourselves. Speak up a bit. Thank you. Yes, it is possible. Thank you. 4 pebbles. So at home on Zoom, find 4 of anything. It's useful to have 4. We've just got some little river pebbles here. But it's useful to have 4 physical things that aren't too big, because it's going to help bring the meditation to life. Some of you might already be familiar with this. It's based on Thich Nhat Hanh's 4 Pebbles meditation. And it's a beautiful way into stillness and reflective practice. So I'm going to start with the bell, and then I'll finish at the end of 15 or 20 minutes, finish with the bell as well. So taking your 4 pebbles and placing them in your left hand. And starting off by arriving in the here and now, taking 3 deep, intentional, full breaths. Feeling the belly rise and allowing the air just to fall out as your muscles let go of some of the tension from the day. enjoying the breath if we can. The breath is what makes us human and sacred. Now pick up the first pebble in your right hand. This pebble represents a flower. Beautiful, light, fresh flower. It represents the flower in us as human beings in the garden of humanity. How do we maintain our freshness, our flowerness? When we get angry or depressed, our freshness is being lost to us. Can we have the confidence in ourselves to recover some of our flowerness? Can we relax and smile and allow our inner flower to manifest? Breathing in, I see myself as a flower. Breathing out, I feel fresh. Breathing in, I see myself as a flower. Breathing out, I feel fresh. Flower, breathing in, fresh. Breathing out. Flower, fresh. Flower, fresh. Flower, fresh. Now place your pebble on your right hand side or on your right leg or on the floor. Now I invite you to pick up your second pebble in your right hand. This second pebble represents a mountain. A mountain that is solid, and stable. A person who cannot be solid and stable is not a happy person. We don't need to be carried away by regrets of the past or fearful of the future. We can cultivate solidity and stability so that no matter how strong the winds are, we can be solid and stable. We can withstand the storms. We can become a refuge for ourselves and for others. Breathing in, I see myself as a mountain. Breathing out, I feel solid. Breathing in, I see myself as a mountain. Breathing out, I feel solid. Mountain, breathing in. Solid, breathing out. Mountain, breathing in. Solid, breathing out. Mountain, solid. Mountain, solid. Now place this pebble on your right. Now pick up your third pebble. The third pebble represents still water. Still water, a calm attitude and presence. A smooth lake or pond from which the reflections are sharp and clear. If the water is not calm, if it's disturbed, then we can't see clearly. What we see is distorted. We see incorrect perceptions. So it's important to cultivate ourselves as still, calm water. So that our reflections are clear and we can see the truth. Breathing in, I see myself as still water. Breathing out, I am calm. Breathing in, I see myself as still water. Breathing out, I feel calm. Still water, calm. Still water, calm. Now place your third pebble on your right. So now we come to the final pebble, the fourth pebble, and the fourth pebble represents space. We all need space and freedom from our busy, preoccupied lives and minds. So it's important we cultivate space. Space for ourselves, space for others, so that we can experience freedom of heart and share it with everyone we meet. Breathing in, I see myself as space. Breathing out, I feel free. Breathing in, I see myself as space. Breathing out, I feel free. Space, free. Space, free. And put this pebble on your right. Now gather up all your pebbles again and hold them. The flower, the mountain, the still water and space. These are qualities that we can cultivate for our own happiness and for the happiness of others. Freshness, solidity and stability, calm and seeing clearly, and space, freedom of heart. And in some traditions, a person will have a pouch for their 4 pebbles and will carry it round with them so that when they touch these 4 pebbles, they can be reminded of these qualities within themselves that are always present. So as we bring our time in meditation to an end, I invite you to reflect back over the last little while. What has nourished you? What has been difficult for you? Were you able to sense any of those good qualities in yourself, even if only for a moment? And how does this spiritual care that we've offered ourselves over the last 20 minutes, how is that a resource for you in your everyday life? And finally, I'd like to dedicate the merit of our practice to all beings. May all beings be happy, may all beings be well, may all beings realize Nibbana. So thank you everyone for your attention. I hope my voice was loud enough, because it feels very loud where I'm sitting, but I appreciate it might not be transmitting online.
I invite people online to notify us if you need the voice to be louder.
Yeah,
Otherwise, we'll assume that it's okay.
it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a love heart on the screen, so it seemed to be okay.
Oh, it seems to be okay.
Yeah.
That's a good start. Okay, so what just happened? What just happened? We came in, it was 7 o'clock. Everything started going. We've done a few things, explored a few different approaches to spirituality. What is this spirituality gig? What is it?
It's a good question.
People online, what is spirituality? Anybody want to hazard a guess? And I'll give you a clue. I've never found one definition of spirituality I thought was complete.
I think it stems from questioning the meaning of life.
It stems from questioning the meaning of life. Yep, that's certainly part of it. Yep, the meaning of life and questioning what that is. Yep, any other takers?
To me, it's related to connecting to the things that are already there, but you're not aware of.
Ah, connecting to things that are already there, but you're not aware of. Such as?
What's inside, what's not inside, and it just becomes one thing.
Yeah. So connecting with what's inside and also recognizing what's not inside. Yeah. And how there is a sense of unity despite all of those different, yeah. Yeah. Anybody online? Anybody got an idea of what they think spirituality is? We've got a very quiet online group. What did you hear about Aboriginal spirituality? So it comes very similar to what the two people here have talked about, meaning of life, connecting. One of the things I do when I read an acknowledgement of country is I talk about the profound disconnection that many Aboriginal people feel because of the stolen generations, because of the way that they were forced off their lands. Now, I'm not going to get political here, but I'm just saying, for some people, intergenerational trauma is a fact of life. And that has come about through profound disconnection with land and family. So that automatically tells us about Aboriginal spirituality. Country is not just a place where they live. Country has profound meaning for them, and family. What about the Thich Nhat Hanh meditation we did? What does that tell us about our spirituality?
Yeah, for me, that ties into how I see spirituality as a framework through which I can understand the unpredictable, the unfair, the vicissitudes of life, which are inevitable, and stillness, solidity, clarity, freshness, as you put it. These are tools, frameworks, lenses that allow you to interpret and manage.
I wish we had a microphone because I don't know that your voice would have transmitted.
The microphone's up there.
Oh, right.
And it's supposed to be.
Oh, okay.
Supposed to.
But that was a beautiful reflection. The vicissitudes of life, a framework. How do we connect with what we can't control?
Yes.
And what qualities do we need just to get by?
Yes.
Because we're not talking about rocket science here, are we? We're talking about getting by every day. Thank you. So what I'm not hearing is nobody as yet has said spirituality is religion. Unless they've said it online, in which case I will measure my words. Right. And I would say that's an important point. We can be religious We can follow a particular spiritual path, but that doesn't necessarily define our spirituality. And in fact, in New South Wales Health, which is where I work, the biggest growing population of patients is SBNR, spiritual but not religious. So, yeah, what does that tell us about people? You've got this long list when you're admitted as a patient, there's a long list, you tick, 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 I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other. Most people are now, the growing number of people are now spiritual but not religious. So that's interesting. What does that mean? How do I relate to somebody who says they're spiritual but not religious? Okay, well, that's an interesting one. If I want to go in and offer intentional spiritual care to that person, it means I've got to figure out what their spirituality is. And I have to do that through listening, and we'll come to that later. And that's why listening to spiritualities of different cultures can be very helpful, because it may well be their country, their culture, their connections, their families. What do they feel connected to? It could be the natural environment. I mean, what I love about the Thich Nhat Hanh meditation is the fact I come away with a picture in my mind of a mountain, a still lake, space all around, and flowers. And that I can go to that place anytime and connect with what's important to me. And it's as simple as, oh, okay, I need to go. It's a bit like having a happy place. And that kind of grounds me when those vicissitudes of life come and attempt to knock me over. So yeah, so that's something about spirituality. It's very personal. It's very personal. Just because we're sitting in this room and online with our online community, and we're all identifying more or less as Buddhist, that doesn't mean our spirituality is the same. It means that we share a little bit of common understanding, and we can kind of probably connect at a certain level, but I can't guarantee that I'm going to know what spirituality somebody has or is important to them just because they say they're Buddhist. It finds expression in different ways. So spirituality for Aboriginal culture, the dance, the movement, the energy, in the music that was played, all of those different sounds were sounds of animals. Or the wind. It's for them, it's what is going on around them. So music for them is, and dance is an expression of their spirituality, as is the painting on their bodies. That's another expression of their spirituality. For Buddhists, what would you say an expression of our spirituality would be? Well, I'm sitting next to some of it.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah. So we have a Buddha statue that we revere. Now, we're not looking at the elements and the golden statue and bowing to the statue. What we're bowing to is that aspect within ourselves that connects with the triple gem, the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. We've got the beautiful fresh flowers, the offerings. We've got the temple bell, and I've brought in my representation of country, which is blue river and river stones and water. So yeah, so just even thinking, what's this spirituality thing all about? We need to think about that when we go into this space of wanting to spiritually care for ourselves and for each other. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Would you say that spirituality is inherently within each of us, but some of us are more in touch with it, but others are not? Or would you say that some people are just not spiritual, which is the common thing we hear?
That is such a good question. So is our spirituality in each one of us?
Yeah.
And do some people have it or not have it?
Like some people will say, oh, like I'm just not spiritual, or like I'm not that kind of person, or something like that.
Well, what do you think?
Well, from the Buddhist perspective that I subscribe to, and from my lens of spirituality, I would say that we all have a mind that is pure, and we all have hindrances that cover up that clear mind. And so, like, for those that say they're not spiritual, it could just be very muddied up, that they're just very out of touch with their connection to people around them and the wider world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that you've answered your own question perfectly. And I would agree with you. When I offer spiritual care, we'll maybe touch on this a bit later, to somebody I've never met before, in the hospital or in the hospital grounds or just walking around the car park, whenever. I work from the fundamental premise that that person is a worthy, pure person, human being. I don't know why they're here. I know they're suffering because they would not have been born if they were not suffering. So I work from that basic premise, and that allows me to connect with somebody. I know, even if they don't know it, and obviously I don't go up to them and say, oh, you look like a suffering sentient being. How are you today? That wouldn't go down. I don't use my Buddhist language when I seek to connect with somebody. But if somebody's looking distressed and maybe they've glanced my badge that says chaplain, I might smile and say, how are you going? Because I see in that person exactly what you've described. I see somebody who is in the same boat as me, who's trying to get by, and who maybe from time to time could do with a little bit of connecting with whoever happens to be to hand. And if that's me, that's my good karma, because it gives me the chance to connect. So beautiful question. Thank you.
Beautiful answer.
So where do we get up to? Okay, so we've kind of, I was going to say we've got a handle on spirituality. Not really. I don't think it's possible to get a handle on it, but at least we've explored what a broad idea it is and how individual and personal it is for each one of us. So then we sort of come to the question, well, what is spiritual care? If there's somebody in hospital, and I will mention hospital, but in fact, in any context, whether they're in a prison or in the police force or in a school, wherever, I will refer to hospital, that's where my own practice is. And they're spiritual but not religious. How am I going to go about offering to care for them spiritually? And this is where the first part of the blurb I put in is, I reckon we all offer spiritual care to people around us every day, but we just don't call it that. So hands up if you smiled at somebody you didn't know today. Thank you, online. Thank you. What do you think that did for the other person? I'm getting some nods here. Somebody online. Connect with us, guys. Connect. Oh, Bill.
Yeah, it makes them smile too.
Beautiful. And how did you feel? How do you feel when a stranger smiles back at you?
Very nice.
Yeah. It's a fundamentally nourishing, connecting thing to do. And it happens so quickly, and yet both people come away feeling a little uplifted.
Yeah.
Hello, Nicola.
Oh, Sinsin.
Hi. So sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to also share that
Yeah.
my parents go for their morning walks daily, every single day. And they don't know the names of the people that they walk past and that they run into, but because they do it every single day, they seem to build the connection in a unique way. They smile at them, they smile back. Sometimes they have very short conversations, and it really, really uplifts their spirit, and they feel that there is a strong sense of community just through that. And they tell me stories about each one of them sometimes, despite the fact they don't know their names. So strangers, but not strangers, because they are kind of like part of their community. They're like, but a bit more than acquaintances in a way, because there is an intimate element in that kind of interaction, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Oh, Cynthia, that makes perfect sense. We don't have to know somebody's name to have that intimate, meaningful connection with them. And you mentioned that they come away with their spirits uplifted. And that's what spiritual care, that's what we aim to do when we intentionally offer spiritual care. So they're doing it because they're nice people, and the people are responding because they're nice people. And everybody who smiles at a stranger, you're just nice people. I mean, let's face it, and that's a nice thing to do. When we go in and do that intentionally, wow, think of the power behind that intention. I am intentionally going to spiritually care for 10 people today, and I'm going to do it just by seeing them as a human being, by smiling or opening the door, or whatever. So each one of us, without realizing it, is actually already, because we're a human being, and because we're decent people and we're already on the path, we're already actually operating in this space of spiritual care. And I hope that that encourages you to keep going and to be a little more intentional about it. And for some people, for me, there was a realization about 15 years ago that actually I wanted to be more intentional, and I wanted to go into spaces where I knew people needed it. Anyway, we'll get onto that later. So spiritual care. So my definition of spiritual care is being available to bear witness to the other's suffering or joy in a way that is experienced as healing and comforting and can be uplifting. So that's where we start, from the just smiling at a stranger to going into some tricky places, because smiling at somebody we don't know is largely risk-free. If they smile back, it's a win-win. If they look at you and frown, you just go, oh, okay, I tried. And you walk on. And we probably haven't done any damage to them or to ourselves. But when we start to deal with vulnerable people, people in distress, we need to be a lot more careful about the way we go about it. And this is where skills come in. So when you start to offer intentional spiritual care, there are skills that we need to learn, and there are qualities that we need to develop. And they're encapsulated by being available to bear witness in a way that is experienced as healing. Being available, what do people reckon? What does that mean, being available? I'm sure you've all had experiences of, oh, I'm going to make myself available to this person. What does that involve doing?
So you try to meet some of their needs.
Trying to meet some of their needs. And how? How do you go about doing that?
So just being available to sort of do what that person needs.
Yeah. And how do you find out what they need?
You would speak to them, or you would listen to them.
Listen to them. That is kind of spiritual care 101, is learning how to listen.
We've got 2 comments from online too.
Oh, excellent. Please share. Thank you, Eugene.
Cincy also said, being a listener.
Sorry?
Cincy also said, being a listener.
Being a listener, spot on. Yep.
And then Jenny said, be present, listening, allow space, give time.
So allowing space and giving time. Wow. So we've already got some pretty good listeners and people who can make themselves available in a group. And so one of the things we do is we listen for the words, and we also listen for the body language. Because somebody can say, oh, I'm fine. Do I look fine? No. So sometimes people, as Eugene said, we need to encourage people to express what they need to say to us. Bearing witness is about being fully present without, I'll just keep an eye on the time, being fully present without fixing somebody's problem. So bearing witness can be quite a difficult thing to do, because when we see somebody who's suffering, particularly if there's somebody close to us, we sort of go, oh, I can't bear the fact that they're suffering. I need to stop them suffering. But sometimes that person, that's their karma, that's their journey. And without that suffering, and the Buddha promised us that the experience of investigating suffering can be transformational. So there's a bit of a skill, a bit of an art in allowing somebody to investigate their suffering, but not in a way that they're isolated, in a way that is connecting to themselves or to another person. So some of what we do in spiritual care is actually we just stay there with people in their suffering. We don't, if somebody's sobbing and in tears, unless they're getting hysterical, so there's always caveats, I will get the tissues and let them cry, because tears are gold. Tears are release. You don't really want to say to somebody, oh, stop your crying, there's nothing to worry about, because actually you don't know that that's true, and it probably isn't. So bearing witness is a skill and is a quality we develop over time and practice and reflection, because there are training programs that are involved in doing this kind of work. Yeah, we don't know the answer to the problem. How could we possibly know the answer to the problem? We can't possibly know the full extent of the problem a lot of the time. So often having an attitude of not knowing. I don't know, beginner's mind. It's a bit like what Eugene said a minute ago. I need to hear what that person needs. And if I go in and think that I've got the answers, I'm not doing them a service. So we train ourselves to listen. How is that person telling me what they need? So doing spiritual care work in an intentional way is about co-creating a space, a safe space, where the other person has the opportunity to tell their story if that's what they want to do. And sometimes they won't want to. Sometimes I'll sit with somebody and I might have already met them once, and I know that they're grieving. I know they've lost somebody important, and that's why they're in hospital, because they're not coping. But actually what they want to talk about are their grandchildren, because that brings up joy for them. And I might think, oh, wouldn't you feel better if you talked about your grief? And it's like, no, how on earth would I know if they would feel better about talking about their grief? If they have chosen to talk about their grandchildren, that's what they need. They're telling me that they need someone to share their joy. So as well as witnessing suffering, we witness whatever the other person brings. If they need somebody to share their joy with, there isn't a lot of joy in hospitals. I can tell you that. And if a chaplain can come in and share a bit of joy, share the photographs, then that's as much of a service as somebody weeping their heart out and sharing their grief. Okay, what else?
We've got a question.
Oh, yes, please.
For me.
Oh, yes, please.
I didn't know if I should disrupt, but
Of course.
are there moments that you would redirect their attention to something you can see as like useful for them? Or are you just there to allow them to process whatever comes up? So for example, if someone is hysterically crying and you can see they're going deeper and deeper into their sorrows, and they may not be able to get out just by fully being present with them. Like, are there times that it's skillful to redirect attention in some way without like
Yes.
asking them to repress their emotion anyway?
Yes, now that's an area of great sensitivity. And one of the principles that we use is trauma-informed care. Because for some people, there are 6 principles, I won't go into them now, but for some people to keep telling their stories reenacts their trauma and is not helpful. So having an attitude that, oh, I'm going to create this safe space and my heart is full of metta and I've got all this compassion and I can bear witness in bucket loads, but this person won't open up and I'm being so nice to them and they won't tell me their story. And it's because there's a reason for that. So that's the opposite of what you're talking about. We then get people who overshare and who get stuck in a loop, particularly in the psychiatric care that the wards that I visited. And that's also not helpful because the person sometimes cannot interrupt themselves. And sometimes it is skillful means to just hold the space and just say, oh, okay, let's just stop for a moment. And let's just see what's going on for you here, because you're getting quite distressed. And my purpose is not to come in and to make your distress any worse. And that's kind of asking their permission to just say, okay, where are we now? And what can I do that's of service to you? What do you need from me right now? Because you're right, there can come a point where it becomes a form of spiritual abuse for me not to intervene. So part of the listening is also the responding. And listening on its own is not enough. It's certainly the starting point, but knowing how to respond is often where the healing comes from. And that is the stuff you need the training for. And some of this is training ourselves to listen in a different way and to listen for different things. So I'm not thinking of anybody in particular, but if somebody was to say to me, I hope my neighbour's feeding my dog, and it is a bit angry and antsy, and you know, they've been in hospital for a week and whatever, and they're getting agitated about a lot of things, then I can hear, oh, I hope my neighbour's feeding the dog. I can feel annoyance and I can hear upset, but actually maybe what that person is saying to me, I love my dog. My dog is my best friend, my only companion, and I miss my dog so much, and I hope she's okay. Because beneath the anger, there is generally a vulnerability, or a fear, or a sorrow. So I can choose, I can use my discernment and the experience that we gain as we do this intentional work. And I can respond to her. I can either say, oh, well, I hope your neighbour is, because they'd be a pretty rubbish neighbour if they weren't. Or I can say something like, gosh, you're really missing your dog, aren't you? Now, which of those feels like it might be more spiritually nurturing? I guess it depends. Because we don't know. And part of what that responding is picking up the message. Because as you said earlier, some people don't know what they need. In our Buddhist framework, we would say the hindrances are covering over their natural purity and calmness and that beautiful state of mind. And it's for the spiritual carer, the chaplain, to go in and see, well, what is that beneath that? If we take away the hindrances, okay, let's ignore the hindrances. What else am I picking up there that I can feed back in order to connect with this person? So that's a really, really good question. And there's no single answer. And that's why we do our training. And we don't just walk into a hospital and say, hey, who wants to chat? There's space for that, particularly in the common areas. And people will sometimes come up to me in the lift or the common areas, and all they want is somebody to kind of normalize this whole being in hospital thing. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that question. Very thought-provoking questions. I'm really having to think on my feet here. Okay, so learning how to respond. So my question when I go up to somebody is what does this person need from me? What spiritual need does this person have, and how can I serve them? And that really is the premise from which, and sometimes it's, oh, no, thanks, I'm not religious. And depending on the tone, I'll say, oh, okay, that's fine. And I'll be on my way, and I might wish them well or whatever. And sometimes I'll say, oh, I'm not particularly religious either. And they'll go, oh. So some people have been damaged by their religious upbringing, whatever their faith is. People assume because I'm Caucasian that I'm a Christian chaplain, even though my badge says Buddhist Council. And that's fine. And it comes back to this point of, I rarely have religious conversations in the hospital. Sometimes I do. Sometimes somebody will say, will you pray with me? And so we will pray together. Some people, if they're a Buddhist practitioner, some people may want a little bit of chanting, which isn't my forte because I'm not a monastic. And I certainly don't carry my temple bell with me, but I know enough to say, for us to chant something simple, or I can use my phone. That's particularly useful in end-of-life situations, where that is a situation where more people need more religious interventions, chanting, meditations, whatever it is they ask for. So what does this person need from me? What spiritual need do they have? And I guess if anybody is thinking of moving into this as an intentional space, this is where the training kind of addresses. You're not going in as a regular, well, you are going in as a regular human being, but you're not going in without any skills and without any training, without any support. And I guess that's where my other job comes in. Oh, you were going to ask a question?
We have a question online actually.
Excellent.
About the previous trauma one.
Oh, please, please do. Yeah.
So Cincy asks, how do you deal with the person who keeps saying, I'm like this because of my trauma, as a response to almost anything that happens? It's almost as if it will be the automatic response, if it was the automatic response.
Yeah, so somebody who keeps saying, I'm like this because of my trauma. Yeah, look, that's a tricky one, isn't it? Because you don't agree with them, but you don't want to disagree with them. So as good Buddhists, we're going to find a middle way, which is sort of, how do we navigate this? And I won't go into it in too much detail, but when we look at, so as part of the training, we look at relational dynamics, which is really just a fancy word for, fancy phrase for how do we get on with people. And there are triangles. Now, if there's any psychologists or counselors amongst you, or psychiatrists, you might be familiar with the Kaufman drama triangle. And that's a triangle with three sides, as triangles are, where there are three roles. There's the victim, the persecutor, the victim, and the rescuer. And unconsciously, we place ourselves, all of our unresolved issues, and believe me, we've all got unresolved issues, and I am no exception to that. We place ourselves unconsciously in one of these roles. So somebody who says, I'm like this because of ... is usually reverting to that victim mentality where they feel disempowered, helpless, disempowered, helpless. When we offer care to somebody like that, we try and move them into a different dynamic. And there's many triangles. There's the winner's triangle, the empowerment dynamic, the beneficial triangle. But the aim is for that victim to see them, to connect with their own vulnerability to the extent they can, rather than to feel powerless. Because when you feel powerless and helpless, there's not a lot you can do. There's no wiggle room. So what can we do? What middle way will allow that person to feel empowered? What middle way is going to give that person a voice? What can we do that's going to help them help themselves, not in a practical way, but in a talking way. Something like that probably needs professional intervention, as in therapy, and spiritual care is not therapy. It is experienced as therapeutic because it can be very healing, but it is not a therapy. Therapy is an agreement, a contract. You have come to me because your functioning in the world is not as you would like it to be. So I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I've still got grief 5 years after whatever. And that's what a therapist does. There is a change agenda where you have come to me and said, I want to change, can you help me change? Spiritual care, I don't do that. I don't go in and say, I see you've got a problem and I'm going to help you change. I'm there to be with that person whilst they find their own way of changing, because I believe that change is within their power. And what I can do is to sit with them and help them through the listening and responding. I can help them. I can be there with them whilst they uncover their own sense of power and they help themselves. I don't know if that makes sense. It's a difficult thing to describe. Since that was a great question, because how often do we then feel helpless to help anybody ourselves? It's like, I want to help you, but I don't know what to do. And that's a tricky one, because we don't want to say to somebody, oh, you need a therapist, but actually that's probably what they do need if they're not responding to any of the other care and attention we're giving them. We're not miracle workers, we're human beings. We do our best. Yeah, you had another.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of engagements. So Jenny said to the previous points you talked about, that's quite beautiful, Nicola. Look, sense, listen, feel for what's suffering, recognize and connect and care for the vulnerabilities beneath the hindrances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spot on.
That was
spot
beautiful.
on. That I'm going to get technical. That is a beautiful example of summarizing.
Ooh.
So one of the listening skills that we learn is how to summarize, because I feel heard. Somebody there was really listening to me. I feel valued as a human being because somebody took the time to listen. Wow, thank you. That's a very powerful experience. And that is a skill that we learn, how to summarize. And it's a way of moving, a way of saying to somebody, I see you, and now we can move on to whatever it is you need to talk about next. And if I've got it wrong, somebody will tell me, oh no, that's not what I meant at all. And they'll correct me. And I love it when people tell me I've got it wrong, because it means, oh, I wasn't connecting in the right way, and they're giving me another chance to connect. So I always love it when people say, no, you got that wrong. Oh, okay, well, tell me, what did I get wrong? Yeah, anyway, thank you. So thank you, Jenny, was it?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny. And thank you, Nicola. So we have actually a question, or is it a comment? Hi, Nicola. I just wondered, to what extent or limit the Buddhist teachings, such as meditation or principle like rebirth, can help you dealing with people with mental health? Do you always use Buddhist teachings in helping people? Such a good question.
Whoa, okay. Again, that's got many layers, that question. Let me answer it in one way and then another way. I rarely use the Buddhist teachings when I offer spiritual care. Very, very rarely. Most of the people I deal with are not Buddhist practitioners. A lot of them would be Christian or would be spiritual, not religious. But so let me just organize my thoughts here. What is really important to me is my understanding of the human condition. So when I go into a hospital, I go in understanding a little bit about rebirth, and the Buddhist philosophy and what suffering is, why it arises, that grounds me in who I am so that I can be a resource for the other person. But me teaching them about karma and rebirth is probably not going to help them in any way, unless they ask for it. If somebody says to me, what is the Buddha's teaching on rebirth? I will have a discussion with them about it. I don't think it's ever happened, to be honest. Now that is different in different contexts. So if you work as a prison chaplain, your role in prison chaplaincy is much more religious, because there you're serving a longer term population that you're going to be serving for some time. You know, some people are in for years. And a prison chaplain will go in and often offer meditation classes, they'll offer some Dharma teachings, there might be some spiritual counseling, which I personally avoid in the hospital situation. So it depends a bit on your context. If you've got a long-term relationship with with a person whose religion is Buddhism, then you can serve them in that way. But I don't know. I mean, the Buddha said karma is unfathomable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who am I to think I've got any idea what karma's about? I've got no idea. Some people will say to me, oh, I'm here because of my karma. And if I want to get technical on them, I'll say, well, the Buddha said that karma is only one of 7 reasons why things happen.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you know it's your karma? Because people will often blame themselves for their circumstances. It's like, oh, I've done this because I did such awful thing, this, that, and the other, or I must have killed somebody in a previous life, and now that's why I've got cancer when I'm 25. It's like, no, I'm hearing that person's got a lot of unfinished business, a lot of questions, but to think that they're not a worthy person, I'm not sure that's true. So that gives me a sort of way of working with them. So that's a good question. Because sometimes it's very tempting to say to people, look, if you believed what I believed, your life would be a lot easier. And I can't do that. Because firstly, I don't know. And secondly, that would be called evangelizing or proselytizing. And one of the things spiritual care is it's not going in to convert people.
Mm-hmm.
So some people say, oh, go into the hospitals and spread the Dharma. It's like, no, that's not what I do. And the students who come to the courses and the training, the education that the college runs, we have to make it clear to them that they cannot evangelize. And Buddhists are as bad at evangelizing as Christians. I can tell you that for nothing, and every other faith. So no, I don't go into evangelize. I don't go into convert people. I don't go into. I might have an attitude of metta when I go in. I will have an attitude of metta, but I don't go in and target people and say, oh, I'm sending metta to you, and now you, and you, and you. I just try and demonstrate an attitude of metta and an attitude of what the Buddhist teachings mean to me in my life. But I certainly don't preach to other people. So sorry, that was a very roundabout way of answering the question. I don't know if I did answer the question or not.
Eddie said, interesting. Thank you for your warmth, Nicola. And I would agree. I feel like that was such a wonderful answer. I mean, personally, I feel like, yeah, definitely. I realize I do evangelize.
I agree as well. I think it's a very nuanced but very distinct but important distinction between sharing your own experience instead of saying, if you knew what I knew, then you'll be better off. I think that's a very, very important distinction. I think most of us would do that by accident or well-intentioned, but
Absolutely.
yeah. Thank you.
Oh, and that's thank you for that feedback and for putting it so succinctly. And that comment you made at the end, it's well-intentioned. It is well-intentioned, but it's not skillful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the training that's why the education, and look, I've done a lot of training. I went through this clinical pastoral education program for 4 years. You don't have to. I chose to take on that level of training. You don't have to take on that level of training. And then I've taken on training as a supervisor, and that was another 4 years to get my first level of accreditation. I'm not finished. So I've been doing this full-on training reflecting for 8 years, and I still don't get it right. So that, but am I well-intentioned? I'm always well-intentioned. If I find that I've got anger or resentment or whatever, I have to say to myself, right, you don't get out of this car, because the minute in the car park outside the Cumberland Chapel, the minute I get out of the car, I'm available. I have my badges on, I'm available to whoever comes up. I might meet patients having a walk from the ward. If they've got long-term patients have leave, I need to be available the minute I step out of the car. And if I discern that I'm not, I have to stay in the car until I feel sufficiently grounded. So that it's not just being well-intentioned, it's going, okay, Sankaras for spiritual care. Sankaras, let's switch them on, because I'm going to need those all day until I get back in the car and go home. And that's not always easy. It's quite hard work listening well.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect segue to Cynthia question, actually.
Yeah.
All right, yes.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, I love how you say Sankara for spiritual care, switch them on. Like, usually when I think about Sankara, I'm like, oh, all these lazy Sankaras. But it's nice to hear about it from the other perspective of like, oh, switch on the positive Sankaras.
Definitely.
Yes, we definitely have questions. So, since he made a comment prior about evangelizing, he said, preaching can seem patronizing because one is implying superiority. Absolutely agree. Thank you for shining a light on that.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
props reflection. We also have a question from Sing. So he said, Nicola, doing this day in, day out can be intense and draining. How do you remain being strong without letting this affect your own well-being? In other words, how do you involve yourself without being involved, if that makes sense?
It does. It does. That's very perceptive. This work can be very intense. It can be very draining. When I leave the hospital, I'm usually pretty tired. Listening is deceptively hard work when you're listening carefully. Yeah, so self-care. You know, I think people are becoming a bit more aware of self-care, but self-care for me is a professional responsibility. So a bit like, you know, talk about not getting out of the car. There's actually a bit of self-care in that. Care for myself, but also care for the others who I might meet. There are some days where if I've had a particularly tricky or demanding interaction, I will go and find my coordinating chaplain, whose name is Col Ward, and I'll say, Col, I could do with a bit of a debrief. And he'll say, not a problem, because he knows when I say that, being a supervisor myself, he knows that I really mean it. So he will put time aside and we'll just debrief and make sure that anything that's still a bit sticky or anything that I'm not sure about, I can get that debrief. I have a supervisor. So for that 8 years I've been training, I've also had a pastoral supervisor. And that is somebody who, as I am now stepping into that supervisor space, this is somebody I take my professional problems to. And the supervisors, I've had 2 particular supervisors who have been amazing. I can take the most embarrassing, ridiculous, awful mistakes to them, and they will help me learn. And they will say to me, oh, okay, maybe now is the time for you to take some time off. So last year I took 6 months off, hospital visiting and teaching and supervising, because I knew I needed that space. You know, my freshness, my flower was so wilted, it wasn't true. My mountain weren't stable and my water was chopping. So, and there was no space. So I have a responsibility to recognize that in myself. Fortunately, I I have the freedom to dictate when I teach. And I organized my teaching calendar so that I could have 6 months off. So self-care, very important. Recognizing the signals, very important.
Yeah, it's almost like the spiritual carers also reaching out for spiritual care themselves. So I do have a question. A bit earlier, we were talking about how sometimes when we're trying to be good listeners as spiritual carers and we hear a different message to what is being communicated because we can see like deeper, like sort of the vulnerabilities, but the underneath the defilements, so the hindrances. Now, so you gave the example of how sometimes you might respond in a way where you're saying like, wow, you really miss your dog or something. But what about when what the message that we're hearing and where we know their reaction is stemming from is somewhere that's really touchy for them? Like, for example, I'll just say like someone, I'll just say someone in my life, for example, just yesterday was saying to someone else, person A, I'm just gonna say
Yes.
so person A approached the area where person B was, and then person B just had an outburst on person A because person A has a relationship with them, but person B felt like there's no connection and they're not speaking and things like that. So person B is like, why are you not speaking with me? You're always just doing your own thing, going off, watching your own TV, not spending time with me. And, you know, why are you doing that? And then person A said, well, I'm available, but at different times to you. And if you can't come and, you know, be available at this time, then I can't spend time with you, kind of thing. And ultimately, I, listening to this, know that it's because person B is very lonely, that they have pretty much zero friends and no one to talk to, don't really go outside and, you know, mingle with many different people. And you know that's where it's stemming from, though they just want to sort of mask it under and blame somebody else for their loneliness. Now, in that case, it wouldn't be skillful to turn around and say, oh, well, you know, it's because you're lonely and you don't have any other friends. That's why you're relying for all of your social interaction on one person.
Yeah.
Sort of, how do you address it when you know that underlying is something deeper, but it's something that they may not wish to have brought up?
Yes, now that's a very, very good, very sensitive question. And we have to tread carefully and sensitively. And this is where skillful responses come in. So person B has just blasted off at person A. And person A is trying to set boundaries and saying, well, you're being, imagining person A is thinking they're being unreasonable, right? And person B is going, I'm so desperately lonely and I don't know the way out of this. And at the moment, the only possible connection I got is person A, but even that I've stuffed up. Right.
Good summarizing.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So how is your question? How, as a witness, how do I approach person B? Or if I was person A?
So that's just like one example. And I'm saying like I'm sort of an outsider.
Right.
And then like I also have a relationship with person B.
Right.
And I'm saying like this is just one example of their issues. But just in general, when you do have sensitive topics, you know that someone's really longing for something or their issue is something else, but you also know that they're not willing to address it.
Yes.
As a spiritual carer, you don't want to step in, but you also don't want to neglect.
That's a very good way of putting it. You don't want to step in, you don't want to tread on them and hurt them, but you also don't want to neglect because you can hear that there's a spiritual need. Gosh, so what do you do? I guess this is where you've got to be creative and figure out what are the baby steps I can take to meet that person where they are without requiring them to be so vulnerable. because people who are vulnerable very quickly are people that are difficult to help. There's no doubt about that. People who find it difficult to regulate their emotions for all sorts of reasons are people who it's sometimes it's just a question of luck and timing. And sometimes there is actually nothing you can do that feels like you're doing it right, but it doesn't mean to say that you stop trying, because you never know whether you could get it right. But if you keep trying and nothing works, then you don't want to end up feeling a failure yourself. So it's, I guess what I'm saying is there's no easy answers, but just being with that person as they are. Sometimes it can be a direct question like, what is it you need? What is it I can do right now? And some people respond to that. Some people can say, now what can be tricky is when the person says, I just want to be left on my own, when you know that that's not true. Sometimes it's baby steps like, do you feel like getting a coffee? Do you feel like going for a walk? And making no demands on them. I don't know, that's a tricky one without knowing the people involved. But it's a question of that, how do you respond in a way that person B says, I feel heard. What could that person B hear? What could they hear? If you were imagining, this is where empathy comes in. So we talk a lot about empathy and how I regard empathy as a skill and how we develop empathy. And it's about, if you were in person B's shoes, what would you want somebody to say to you? So say you were person B now, what would you want somebody to say to you?
So yeah, I agree, we should spend more time together. It's hard because, my timings don't suit yours, but we should work on it.
Okay. So that's what person B wants to hear from person A. Is it within person A's capability to offer that answer or not?
Yeah.
Do they know? Do they know that that's what person B wants to hear?
I think, yeah.
That they're not doing it? Or they could do it?
They could.
But they don't want to.
Correct.
So that's a whole different dynamic there. Yeah. So we've got, and then because we've got an outsider, we're now invoking what we call triangulation. Yeah. So we've now got two people who are being victims and persecutors, and we've now got a third person, a rescuer. So you see how the dynamics work? So that unconscious dynamic is going on. And it's only when there is a recognition that the victim is vulnerable, the persecutor can become assertive, and the rescuer can become compassionate. So that's one of the triangles. I think that's the winner's triangle, Archie Choi, somebody like that. So this is where we work on relational dynamics. Yeah, whenever we're stuck, we've got to step out and go, what's really going on here? And where are the sticking points? That's an interesting one. Thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Simran. Such a great question. Thank you.
Yeah.
We just have final two comments online, then
Yeah.
we're pretty much at time.
Yeah. No, I can't
know,
believe it.
whoa.
Yeah.
So we've got Jenny, she said, in regards to what we just talked about, she said, it's compassionate to recognize that maybe in those moments we tried our best to be sensitive and skillful, even if that best still isn't wise enough. Our kind intention and action counts, and we are still developing wisdom.
That is true. And can I segue that into the development of wisdom? Wisdom is a quality that we actively seek to develop in ourselves when we do this work. And for me, I've gained enormous wisdom from all of the training I've done. And if anybody's interested to do the training, the first training course is a 5-day course, and it's called the Introductory Clinical Pastoral Education, or CPE course. And I'm running one in October, but that's full, but there will be more next year. So, and that 5-day course is where you discover for yourself whether this is an activity you want to pursue. So it doesn't commit you to anything. It gives you, you do get an education, a certificate saying introductory course, so that if you wanted to volunteer in an aged care facility, if you wanted to volunteer in a hospital, not in a prison, you need to go to the next level for prison. Defense, likewise, you need to go to the next course. But it gives you the basics of what reflective practice is, basic listening and responding skills. And it kind of, for me, I did that introductory course and I thought, where has this been all my life?
What was the name of it again?
So CPE is called Clinical Pastoral Education, and this is the introductory CPE course. So what I might do, if anybody's interested, please put my email up
Is
on
it
the
this
chat.
one?
Oh,
Is that it?
oh, wow.
She's quick.
Well,
She is,
was
that's,
that
yes,
it?
so that was, yes, so my ugly mug is up in that, that photo. So that's the second course. So if you do the 5-day course, you think, oh, wow, which is what I did. We then do a more in-depth course. And that's the course that really sets you off on the path. If you want to work in a prison, you need to do at least one of these courses. If you want to work in defense, it's usually a couple. If you want to be employed as a chaplain, you need to do the longer course.
The longer, which is the one in the link. Do you have your email that you can provide to people? We already have someone who
Yes,
said they would.
because actually I've put out expressions of interest for the course next year running in semester 1.
Yep.
Yes, so yes, my email address, is it not already on there? I will write it down and you can put it in the chat.
There's a chaplaincy@buddhistcouncil.org. Would that be?
Look, that's a place if you're ready to go into a New South Wales run facility like a hospital or a prison.
Okay.
The courses I run are through the New South Wales College of CPE. They're through, and I'm a supervisor with the Mental Health CPE Centre.
Great.
So this is an increasingly multi-faith organisation, and these are the people who, so that particular long course, foundational course, was run through the Buddhist Council, but increasingly we're running all the courses on a multi-faith basis because we're finding that just Buddhists speaking with Buddhists or just Christians speaking to Christians is not working and meeting the educational needs of the chaplains. So there's my. So anybody who is in the slightest bit interested.
Yeah. We will we'll put it in the Zoom.
Yeah, whether it's wanting information on the courses that I and my colleagues run, or whether it's, for instance, there's quite a lot of jobs going in the aged care sector. There's been a massive recruitment drive. So you can work as they're called pastoral practitioners. Working minutes, that's how I got into spiritual care, through an elderly friend and supporting her through her journey into aged care and end of life and subsequently. And there, it is beautiful to go in and speak with old people. You know, we look at the first noble truth, suffering is to be understood. That's what we're told. You know, birth, sickness, aging and death. If you want to understand aging, go and speak to a bunch of old people. If you want to investigate suffering, go and speak to a bunch of people who are suffering and who have time to reflect on their suffering and tell you what it's like to get old. I learned so much from going in and speaking with people in aged care facilities. And these days you can actually get a proper paid job doing this. Prison chaplaincy for Buddhist practitioners is generally on a volunteer basis. And that you need to go through the Buddhist Council for, but all the training is done through the CPE Centre. Hospitals ditto because of the agreements with the state-run authorities. What else? Defence. If anybody's interested in defence chaplaincy, I can put them in touch with people. There are various requirements, and you need to be under 45. But again, that's a great way to go. If you're sitting there and you're 35 and thinking, or 40 or whatever, and thinking this is what I've always wanted to do, there are pathways to do that, and I can put you in touch with the people to do that.
Why the age limit?
Sorry?
Why the age limit?
45, because a lot of defence personnel retire at 55 and they need to get their money's worth. I think is the most pragmatic answer I can offer, but don't quote me on that.
I thought you'd say something about, combat readiness or
Yeah,
something like that.
There are Buddhist chaplains who are on active service and are most definitely combat ready.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
Yeah. I won't mention their names, but if you're listening, you know who you are. Yeah, they do an amazing job.
Yeah.
On a multi-faith basis again, because there's one of them and they go out and that's their community for the next several months, and they serve the spiritual needs of everybody on board the vessel that they go off with. It is remarkable service to the community and the people there. And of course, with all the Royal Commissions on veteran suicide and PTSD and whatever, really meaningful work. How you square that being with a Buddhist and defence, that's something you have to reflect on and be comfortable with. Because if you're not, you can't go and do the work there.
You have a question as well. Is the qualification recognized across the states?
Now that's a good question. It is. So it's the qualification, the foundational CPE unit. The course certificate is recognised wherever you go. It's a 3-tier system. So we start off with CPE 1, 2, and 3, and at CPE 3, you can apply for your advanced standing with the college, which may or may not confer the benefits you're looking for. And at that point, some people are invited into supervisory training, which is what I did. I did 1, 2, and 3, gained my advanced standing, and then embarked on my further training. Yes, it is right. You could take this. So we're so New South Wales College is part of a bigger federal organisation called ANZACB, which is the Australia and New Zealand College for CPE. Is it college or centre? We also have links with the American CPE organisation, and CPE is recognised throughout the world. I'm not saying that they're identical or equivalent. The curriculum is not the same depending on where you go, but I could take my qualification as a supervisor to the UK, because obviously here I'm English, and they would go, oh, whoa, that's great, come and work for us. And the CPE would be recognised there. So it is, in New South Wales, we teach it as a master's level course if you want academic credit. Most people don't. But if you wanted to do a master's of chaplaincy, then 2 CPE units account towards that. I'm finishing off a master's of pastoral supervision, and I'm using 36 credit points for my CP to gain that. So there's a few different pathways.
There we go. Hope that answers your question, Jenny. And did you have anything you wanted to talk about further?
Oh, look, no, I'm delighted with all the questions. I mean, that's what I was hoping would happen.
Yeah.
It's yeah, as you can tell, I sort of live and breathe this now, and I feel very passionate about, I just feel everybody in distress needs to have somebody to spiritually care for them. And whether it's somebody who goes through the training and ends up in intensive care, or whether it's somebody who just says, oh, I see you're having a tough day, all of that is important. All of it contributes to harmony in society. All of it brings peace of mind to us and other people. And I don't think we can undervalue any step, whether it's a big step or small step. And it's this journey in samsara. We've just got to do it and support each other as best we can, because I don't know about you, but I'm a long way off leaving samsara. So we might as well,
might as well do it all together.
be in it together, that's right. So thank you, everyone. I've really enjoyed the questions. Thank you for those. And thank you to the online people who turned up. I can see lots of names up there. Some of them I know, some of them I don't know. So it's nice to see
We've
you.
got a few thank yous coming through too, from actually a lot of thank yous. Thank you for the warm session, rich session, insightful session, thought-provoking session.
Oh,
And I can probably say on behalf of everyone that it was a very insightful, thought-provoking session. It's such a special session because we didn't talk much about Buddhist concepts, but we talked about very practical ways we can practice Buddhism in a way of spiritual caring for people, whether it's people around us, people we love, the people we meet on the street, as a way to improve, work on our own practice, grow our wisdom, but also just be there for other people. And yeah, so it was also such a calming session. I feel like the way you talk is very calming. I feel like even when I'm talking, I'm slowing down, which is like yeah, it's just I feel like I was very spiritually cared for, even though
wonderful.
yeah, so wonderful. Thank you very much for your time and for your session today. And would you like to do a dedication? Would you like to do a dedication of merits or prayers before we finish up?
Oh, okay. Have we got anybody online? Have we got haven't got my long distance glasses on, so I can't see. I would like to invite somebody online to do a dedication of merit. Sinsin, how's your singing voice this evening?
It's always great. You don't need to ask the time of day.
Oh, I'm being polite. I'm being polite. Do you have something up your sleeve you can offer by way of closing?
Yeah, I guess I can. Okay, you put me on the
You can do
spot.
it,
But I will do it.
Yay,
Thank you so much, Nicola, for the wonderful session. It was really insightful. So much appreciation for everything, Nicola. I hope to be able to invite you again to future sessions if you're available, Nicola. I guess let's just send our warm wishes and love to everyone, and hold the space in our heart, and let's pause for a moment and sending gratitude and appreciation, joyful appreciation for whatever we have received in our life. Yanida Bhutani Samagatani Umani wa yani wa antalike Tathagatam dewa manusa pujitan Buddhang namasama swati hotu Yanida Bhutani Samagatani Bhumani Vayani wa Antalike Tathagatam dewa manusa pujitan Dhammang namasama swati hotu Yanida Bhutani Samagatani Bhumani Vayani wa Antalike Tathagatam dewa manusa pujitan Sanghang namasama swati hotu Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Wow.
Wow.
Sissy, we need to invite you to do more
Mm.
dedication of marriage. Oh my gosh, what have we missing out all this time? That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ken.
He just pulled it out of his sleeve too. Imagine he did some pepper.
Wow.
Wow. What a perfect end to
Definitely.
such a wonderful talk today. Wow. Thank you so much, Nicola.
Oh,
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for coming in.
Yeah.
person. And thank you to everyone
Thank
online.
you.
And thank you for your questions
Yeah.
and your attention. Thank you.
Oh.
I appreciate it.
Thank
I
you.
do.
And with that, we will. Yes, the camera's that way actually. So I'm like, oh, I'm the only one facing.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So yeah, thank you.
See you all next week, everyone.
Yes, you'll next week,
Online.
but we have
Because I'm
some
normally
closing
online.
notifications. Popping on your screen. So Monday meditation, 7 to 8:30, Bankstown West Sydney University, as well as online. Tuesday yoga in person, WSU in Bankstown. Wednesday wisdom in person in Parramatta, as well as online. And we have monthly meetups as well, where currently we have Santi nuns organizing for us. We've got people like come together, have some food, do some tai chi or some other activities. So it's a lot of fun. It's this Sunday,
This
right?
Sunday.
Yeah, awesome.
I've got my ticket. Oh, they're great. They're great events. Yeah,
Oh wow.
they are.
Well, you've got recommendation from our own Nicola and Simran and many
yeah.
people here. So
Yeah.
hope to see you there if you can make it. And with that, have a lovely evening, everyone, and a great week. And see you next week.
Thank you.
Oh, this
Thank
Sunday. Thank
Yeah.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Nicola.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
So much,
Okay.
Nicola.